If the thing that is in the way is actually in the way, you've admitted it in the way, you've presented new legislation in the House saying that it's in the way, then get out of the way.
Donald Trump just did something so logical, for one, and also so sly. So telling. We will soon see, thanks to this, because it's going to be eye-opening, the response to it, who our prime minister really serves. And not just us, other NATO countries as well. Who do they actually serve? We're going to get into all of that breaking news in just a little bit. I'm Jasmine Elaine. Subscribe, like, follow, comment your thoughts down below, and share this video far and wide so we can get our country back. Like what Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives are trying to do right now. And Pierre Poilievre brought facts while CBC brought nothing but feelings. His first appearance on their network in months, and I could not look away. This was so much better than Love is Blind or Temptation Island or any other reality TV shows that I like to binge on Sunday nights. All that and so much more is coming up today on Over Opinionated.
And so far, he's succeeded at setting up an office with one employee, and he sent a list of 5 projects that were already approved or almost approved before he got there, and now he's picking up the football in the end zone to spike it. But in reality, some of the projects that he put on his list have already been under construction. It's really incredible to see a prime minister show up and take credit for something that happened before he even got there, and then claim that it is a new achievement. But I think we're going to see a lot of that. I think he's been very good at confusing activity with achievement.
And boy, is that ever accurate, because according to a recent Ipsos poll, which was conducted between September 5th to 8th, exclusively for Global News, they found that Mark Carney's government had a 58% approval rating, which was the highest that Ipsos has ever recorded for any federal government in nearly a decade. In fact, the last comparable high was Justin Trudeau's government at 61% in its first year of operation. You know, one thing I do love about polls, though, is the fact that they will go and tout this and say, yeah, the majority of Canadians agree that Mark Carney's the absolute best. However, when you actually look into polling numbers, it's why I barely ever talk about polls, even when they're in our own favor. It is so important to look at the key details. Some of the key details of this one being the reality check that about the study, this is according to the media release of this poll, that this survey sampled 1,001 Canadians aged 18 plus who responded online. So I don't know if 1,001 Canadians who decided to click on a link to fill out a poll, which I've personally never done or even seen pop up, by the way. So it makes you wonder, whose algorithms are these targeting? Are these people who regularly respond to Ipsos polls? Who are the types of people who do that? Who subscribe to their newsletter?
The second is, yes, some of those projects, shovels will be in the ground, they'll be moving forward. I'll take one project where what we're shifting is the timeline when those shovels start, which is high-speed rail, where the process of specifying routes and approvals and doing the engineering was slated to take 8 years. We think we can do it in 4. We certainly can organize the government's component of that within 4, now that we have the authorities that we do. That's what we're going to do. So in that case, the test on the TGV will be the start of the actual construction of the project within your 5-year horizon.
It is really fascinating that Carney's approval rating jumped 10 points over the summer, even though Parliament has been out of session. Tariffs are higher than they were initially. No deal with Trump, and unaffordability is still certainly a huge, huge issue. It just signals that Mark Carney's very popular for doing nothing. And that is actually the problem, because Canadians are responding to image, not impact, which means support for him is certainly fragile and reversible. But ultimately, that Mark Carney's high approval rating is not built on anything of substance. It's built on vibes, not results.
Lots of meetings, lots of politicians patting themselves on the backs.
So is Danielle Smith confused then?
So
is that what you're saying?
If you look at the actual results, there have been none. As for a pipeline, To the Pacific, we already had one. It was called the Northern Gateway. Justin Trudeau killed it.
Well, the courts said that there was not sufficient consultation.
With respect, the project was approved, and the Trudeau cabinet killed it. They vetoed it. That is a fact. And so that was a multi-billion-dollar project that would have been completed 7 or 8 years ago. Mr. Carney testified against that project. So this might be another...
When you're saying testified at parliamentary committee.
He did. He testified at a parliamentary committee against a pipeline from Hardisty, Alberta to Kitimat, BC, which is exactly the project with some very minor modifications that Ms. Smith is pushing for now. So we're hoping that Mr. Carney has flip-flopped on this, and he'll go ahead with it. But what I would really say on this is that when it comes to these projects, we have 38 projects the federal government has been holding up that are in the Impact Assessment Act system already.
They're in progress right now.
They only need to get a permit to go ahead. They don't need a government grant, a government handout, a press release, a photo op. They really need one thing from Mark Carney: get out of the way and grant a permit so that private money can build private projects that actually make money for our country rather than cost the taxpayer.
I still do not understand, though, why you are saying he's in the way, nothing to see here. The office, you're dismissing it as one employee. That's the CEO. I don't know how many other people have or haven't been hired. But you have Danielle Smith, Tim Houston, Wab Kinew, the business community themselves saying this is important. Danielle Smith saying be patient. How is it that you're saying nothing to see here when so many other people seem to think, across the political spectrum, seem to think that this is meaningful?
So here's what CBC is trying to do. Number one, they're trying to triangulate all of these other people into it because the goal is to paint Pierre Poilievre as negative, out of touch, or perhaps dishonest, while presenting Mark Carney as quietly effective and collaborative, right? Because their angle is that, well, if Mark Carney's done nothing, then why is it that Premier Danielle Smith, who is the premier of your province that your riding is in, that you're an MP from, Tim Houston, all of these people, they all say that it's been productive or that this is a good step in the right direction. The reality, though, is that many of these premiers are not praising results at all. If polite optimism counts as progress, according to CBC News, then Canada has just been thriving in imagination lately.
Again, I think she's right. We have to be patient because of Mark Carney's snail's pace.
But that's not what she's saying.
What I'm saying is that Mark Carney has been Prime Minister for 6 months. Now, he promised that we would move at unprecedented speeds, that this was like wartime.
And there are little things they can do. There's permitting still to be done. There are things that need to happen to get these across the finish line, but they found the ones that are literally closest to the line. With that said, I think they did need the legislation. They do need that office to sort of speed those projects along. But, I look at these, the LNG plan, the Darlington stuff, the Montreal port, these are all projects that we were talking about last year. And as soon as he mentioned this idea of major projects, there was never a list that sort of went around, but every reporter and every policy expert in the country has been comparing lists saying, here's what I think might be on it. And basically all 5 of these, maybe with the exception of the mine in Saskatchewan, were all very close to the top of that list. And I think that question about why couldn't we just do this 6 months ago is a good one. And it's important because the Prime Minister set that bar in his messaging, saying we are going to do things that previously thought impossible at speeds that, we haven't seen in generations. And 6 months since he won the election, to get these projects were that close does kind of feel like the speed of government.
I feel secondhand embarrassment for people who are cheering on things like Bill C-5 because sure, yes, is it great in principle, but once you start peeling back the layers of it a little bit, you kind of realize wait a second. Why does the government need a new office, more bureaucracy, and new legislation to help them cut red tape instead of just cutting the red tape? What? That makes no sense at all. And the results of it, here we are months later, is that there's been 0 major new private sector projects that have broken ground, $62 billion. and counting has left Canada since Mark Carney took office. The only things that are actually moving by this Liberal government are taxpayer-funded nation-building announcements, grants, and subsidies. So
why is a middle ground so inherently bad?
Well, I just don't think a middle ground is realistic, and I don't think industry thinks that a middle ground is realistic, and I don't think that attracting investment on this middle ground is realistic. In order for us to attract the investment necessary, to attract the proponents necessary to build these projects, you have to give them a very, very clear signal. A signal that you can build here, that we're open for business. Well, your C5 is an admission that you may or may not approve a project at a certain point. Do you really think that an industry would look at C5 as the end-all, be-all of, yes, we are going to dump money in Canada because it's a sure bet? I'm not sure about that.
The more that I think about it, things like C5, while not repealing all of the harmful legislation that has actually hindered your industries, their development, manufacturing, their opportunity, and our economy, is that it signals to global investors that Canada is just so unserious. And we're seeing the impacts of that because real investors want predictability. They want speed. I'm of the belief that things like Bill C5 and how it is being rolled out by the government, the many things that they say that are of deep concern if you're an investor listening to a press conference, is that it deepens the perception of Canada being a high risk and anti-development nation, which is exactly why that capital is fleeing to the US and it's fleeing to other nations. And it's not even wasting its time with Canada anymore because after 10 years, I think they get the picture.
And I don't think many others are sure about that. And that is exactly what we're talking about. If the thing that is in the way is actually in the way, you've admitted it in the way, you've presented new legislation in the House saying that it's in the way, then get out of the way and drop those things in order for us to actually have the development, for us to stand on our own 2 feet, for us to be resilient, and for us to be less dependent on a single customer in the U.S.
Are you willing to alter your position if, for example, LNG Canada does decide to go forward with phase 2, if there does appear to be a pipeline proponent that comes forward with this regulatory structure that is in place, not with the rescinding of all of those climate policies? Like, are you willing to admit, if that is the case, that what you're...
No, you're speaking in hypotheticals. Like the pipeline didn't even make, like the pipeline didn't even make a list. There isn't even a thought of a list.
There is no pipeline.
Correct.
There is no proponent for a pipeline. Yeah.
Well, there is no proponent for a pipeline because, well, frankly, because there are things in the way for that pipeline. But there is not even a thought of putting a pipeline on a list, and that's precisely because he has the exact same people around him who are anti-pipeline. It is akin to being a vegetarian in a steakhouse. You know that he's there, but he's never going to order anything, and everybody knows that.
And before we get into what is the most entertaining portion of that interview with Pierre Poilievre, I really want you to just follow the money. Follow the power here, okay? So Donald Trump just did something that I think is going to open up the eyes of a lot of people.
Allies to impose sanctions on Russia for its war on Ukraine.
On the surface, yeah, NATO countries should totally stop buying Russian oil. Gosh, if only they had a replacement like Canada or something. But when you dig deeper into this is where it gets very interesting. So this was a letter that President Trump sent to all NATO nations, and then he published as well for the rest of the world to see, where he highlights in here that he wants sanctions on Russia when all NATO nations have agreed and started to do the same thing, and when all NATO nations stop buying oil from Russia. As you know, NATO's commitment to win has been far less than 100%, and the purchase of Russian oil by some has been shocking. It greatly weakens your negotiating position and bargaining power over Russia. I think it's also really important to highlight so loudly, like boombox off the rooftop here, that the world wants Canadian energy. We just don't let them have it. In the last couple of days, we had a diplomat from the UK telling CTV News how much they would love to have a reliable, clean, democratic partner like Canada. But Canada has done nothing. We have no new terminals. We have no major infrastructure in that regard. Back in 2022, the former German chancellor came to Canada begging for Canadian LNG. And Nothing happened. We sent him home empty-handed, and guess what Germany did? They signed a 15-year LNG contract with Qatar instead. In Japan, they have also said that Canadian LNG could play a key role in their energy security as they reduce Russian imports. And yet, our federal policies have no new LNG export terminals issued, and the story keeps repeating itself with diplomats from India, Poland, Eastern Europe, all saying the same thing. We would love the opportunity to have Canada, and Canada hasn't done anything about it. That sounds a lot like deliberate sabotage to me, especially when, as much as you want to say, oh, it's because of the environment, here's Mark Carney's own admission.
We have the lowest risk, I'll stick with oil, we have the lowest risk oil in the world. We know exactly where it is. We know how to mine it and develop it. The marginal costs are amongst the lowest costs in the world, and our engineers keep improving on those costs. We need to move towards it being one of the lowest carbon.
Don't fall for the lies, by the way, because Canada does, in fact, produce some of the lowest emission oil in the world, especially from newer conventional sources. So actually, if you want to take data from the Canadian Energy Regulator and also the International Energy Agency, about half of Canada's oil production is conventional oil and gas, not in oil sands, which are higher carbon, if that is something you're concerned with. And that half is some of the cleanest you can possibly get on the globe. So killing Canadian oil doesn't reduce global emissions. It just shifts demand to dirtier suppliers like Russia, Venezuela, Nigeria, Iraq. Carney's policies do not cut emissions. They export them elsewhere. And by the way, the result of Canada saying no to all of the people who have come asking for it has only driven our allies deeper into dependency with authoritarian states, people who they can't really rely on or trust that much. It has cost Canada tens of billions of dollars in lost revenue, and it has also collapsed investment confidence in Canada. And now we have Donald Trump pushing NATO to cut off Russian oil in its entirety. And Carney is making sure that nobody could then go and buy Canadian oil instead because of the environment. And here's where it gets incredibly juicy. Trump also writes, I believe that this plus NATO as a group placing 50 to 100% tariffs on China to be fully withdrawn after the war with Russia and Ukraine is dead will also be of great help in ending this deadly but ridiculous war. China has a strong control and even grip over Russia, and these powerful tariffs will break that grip. This is not Trump's war. It would have never started if I was president. It is Biden and Zelensky's war. I am only here to help stop it and save thousands of Russian and Ukrainian lives. If NATO does as I say, the war will end quickly and all of those lives will be saved. If not, you are just wasting my time and the energy and the money of the United States. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Blocking that. But I want to talk to you about a related issue here, which is about emissions, carbon emissions. I've been covering you for years. I cannot recall hearing you talk about concerns around climate change. Do you worry about what climate change will do to our planet, Pierre Poilievre?
Sure, and that's why I'm so disappointed with the very problematic approach of the Liberal government, which has been to drive up energy costs and block projects from going ahead that would help the environment.
So are you an environmentalist, Pierre Poilievre?
Sure, you can call me whatever you like.
No, well, I want to know what you'd call yourself. I mean, we are talking about like sea levels rising, worried about loss of biodiversity. You worry about those things.
Remember, Donald Trump said China has a strong grip over Russia. And if you want that grip to end, you have to break it. And that is where Canada gets exposed. Because Mark Carney is actually building an entire economy based on feeding the rise of China. That's the green transition. The last I checked, it was upwards of 93% of all of the manufacturing involved in wind turbines, solar panels, new grid tech comes from China. And you know, it's funny. I actually remember just a couple days ago seeing on the internet in Eastern Canada, they're so proud about all these new wind turbines that they're going to be having. Guess who manufactures those? Not Canada. Nope, mostly China. Mostly China. EV batteries, almost all supply chains run through China in some way, shape, or form. What about critical minerals? Well, Canada may dig them up, but China refines 80% of the world's supply. And you know what's funny about all of this is that Canada bans pipelines, refineries, and value-added industry here, but then buys back the finished products from China at a markup. Meanwhile, if you care about the environment so much, China uses cheap Russian oil and coal to power all of the factories making all of this amazing green tech that's going to change the world.
Like if we were to displace dirty Asian coal-fired plants with clean Canadian natural gas, according to the National Bank, we could reduce global emissions by 2.5 billion tons, which is 3 times the emissions of all of Canada for a year. But to do that, you need liquefaction terminals like the one that Prime Minister Harper approved, LNG Canada. And we shouldn't be talking about having one more. We should be talking about having 18 or 19 LNG liquefaction plants. That's the number that were proposed when the Liberals took office. And so what I propose, let's take our natural gas, which is very clean, which is very cheap in Canada. Right now, we only get $3 per million metric British thermal units, and let's sell it to Asia for $14. We could help power the most populous continent by getting them off of dirtier coal and reducing global emissions. But the real difference between myself and the Liberals on this is they believe in keeping it in the ground. Those are Mr. Carney's words, by the way. He wrote them. We can debate whether he's flip-flopped on that as well. Or the conservative approach, which is let's use our energy to grow the paychecks of our people and protect the environment. They believe in energy poverty. I believe in energy abundance, and that is the approach that we would take to the environment.
You say you're worried about climate change. Mm-hmm. Why have we not seen you ever commit to emissions reductions targets?
I just did right now.
That's not a target. That's saying we should do more to reduce our emissions. That's not about meeting the Paris targets. That's not saying our 2030 targets are right, wrong, should be higher, lower.
The current government is not meeting its emissions targets.
But I'm asking whether you think those are valuable targets, not about what the federal government is doing, which you've been clear about.
It would be very easy. In fact, it would be very easy to meet all of those targets if we include the global reductions that the export of Canadian nuclear and natural gas would engender. And so I'd say, sure, not only could we could displace the equivalent of 3 years of emissions in Canada by sending our Canadian natural gas over to Asia and displacing dirty coal. I mean, you know, the Asian economies are adding these coal-fired plants one after the other because they don't have access to affordable natural gas. We have the most affordable gas. It's easy for us to liquefy it because our cold climate does most of the work. And we have the shortest shipping distances to both Asia and Europe of any country in the Americas. So why would we not use that kind of pragmatic approach that enriches rather than impoverishes us?
I want to turn.
Trump is trying to sever the China-Russia access, whereas Carney and Canada, Justin Trudeau, everybody involved inside of that caucus are trying to strengthen it by crippling Canadian energy, by making things more expensive for us here, by making allies dependent on these Chinese supply chains, and then by pretending it's about saving the planet, but it's actually just propping up our biggest geopolitical adversary. And it's really interesting to see all of this happen because most people don't know. They've never looked into this. And here we have Donald Trump, who's desperately trying to break China's grip on Russia, and Mark Carney tightening China's grip on Canada. And I want you to really think about that and why. I'm Jasmine Lane. Subscribe, like, follow, comment your thoughts down below, and share this video far and wide. I will talk to you on Monday.